It is time for the Sportsmemo NFL Every Game on the Board podcast, where we're going to bring in first guest Robbie Veno, go over the top half of the card, and then have Andrew McGinnis on for the back half of the card. So first up, Robbie V, welcome into the podcast. How's it going today, buddy?
Things are good today, Drew. How about for yourself?
Really good. Happy Friday to all the listeners out there. Happy Friday to you, Robbie. You're absolutely killing it in college football and NFL this season. And excited to get your opinions here on the NFL games. Anything you want to throw out as far as overall betting kind of philosophy before we get into breaking down each game?
Nothing really changes for me, Drew. I think that one thing that we should point out to people is that in college and pro, you can almost divide the season into segments. At least I do myself. What happens the first quarter of the year in the NFL doesn't necessarily continue through the second quarter of the year, as teams have made some changes and adjustments and results become a little bit different now. So you have to be wary. Handicapping's a funny science, Drew, because we always have to be able to adjust on the fly, sort of proactive in our ways. And, you just can't get caught up in thinking that things are going to be repetitive all season long. They're certainly not. I think we'll see a couple of changes here in the NFL right now as far as power shift is concerned. And, just say for bettors out there, be aware. There are certain shifts that are going to happen and things that do change. Divided into quarters, I think, in the NFL 16-game season or 16-week season. Split it into 4 fourths and go about it that way. Four sets of 4 games. And I think you can see a lot of the things that I'm trying to describe here very generically.
All right. Well said, Robbie. Let's get into the games. 251, 252, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific kick. Arizona at Minnesota. Looks like 43 the total, with Minnesota laying anywhere from 10 or 10.5 at home.
Yeah, big win for the Vikings last week, right, against Philadelphia. Go to Philly, win 23-21. That came off of the heels of the offensive shootout with the LA Rams. You could say or argue that, the last 2 games played by the Minnesota Vikings, Drew, might be against the 2 teams that have the best personnel on paper in the NFC. Now, of course, New Orleans comes into that argument. Other teams come in. But you could argue that those are 2 of the best personnel-wise. So that was a difficult 2-game set for the Vikings. They come out of it with a split. Now they get to face the Arizona Cardinals and rookie quarterback Josh Rosen. It's interesting here, Drew, when you go through some of these numbers of teams statistically thus far on this season. Some of them are real eye-openers, and the one for me, and I know it's a hair bit skewed, but the fact that Minnesota is allowing 279 passing yards per game right now, it to me is a bit alarming, and I think that's one of those things I was talking about shifts earlier. I think that's something that's going to shift here. Now, that secondary and that pass rush is too good to be allowing that type of yardage here against Arizona, a team that can't run the ball a lick. I kind of think that Josh Rosen will have a difficult game here. One more thing to add. Minnesota's sort of been in this position before. Just think a few weeks back, laying 16.5, 17 at home to Buffalo. No way Buffalo can win. They stink. Buffalo comes in and wins that game. Not only outright, but they destroyed Minnesota in that contest. Again, as I say often on this podcast, you can't blanket statement anything when it comes to sports handicapping. But my opinion on this particular instance, having gone through this once and failed miserably as the double-digit home favorite in an expected blowout win, I think Minnesota will have their eyes wide open this time around, which to me is a bit troublesome for the Arizona Cardinals. Minnesota just tearing it up through the air right now, 321.5 yards per game. And I know Arizona's got a couple of guys in that secondary that can play, Patrick Peterson being one. But I could see Minnesota finding a lot of holes in Arizona this week. So it's a big number, but I'd probably lean that way.
Guys, coupon code VENO49. Remember it, half off of Rob Veno's 7-day all-access pass. Having a great NFL and college football season. More of the high volume, guys. If you like a lot of plays and good plays. good quality plays. Veno's your choice. Veno 49 at checkout for half off his 7-day all access. Another 1 o'clock Eastern kick here, Robbie. Evenly priced game as far as the betting markets are telling us. 253, 254 LA Chargers at the Cleveland Browns. We got Pinnacle showing Cleveland as a 1-point favorite. Most shops at Pick'em also have the Greek showing LA Chargers as a 1-point favorite. 45.5 the total. Robbie, how would you look to bet Chargers and Browns?
I think just at first glance, Drew, you would have to believe that this is going to be a shootout back and forth between Phillip Rivers and Baker Mayfield, the two passing games. Cleveland, since Mayfield has taken over, and the Chargers, of course, since Phillip Rivers has been there, certainly are the anchors of the offensive side of the football for both of these teams right now. Cleveland's running it fairly well too, but San Diego's a good run defense, so I think you're going to see the ball in the air here a lot. You have that dreaded West Coast to East Coast 1 o'clock start here for the LA Chargers, something where a lot of people still mechanically play against the West Coast team, playing what for them would be a 10 a.m. start. It could come into play here. It's always something to consider. I don't put a ton of stock into it in this particular contest, but we will see if the Chargers come in sleepwalking. I would doubt it. I think the biggest key to this game when you look at both of these teams, and my initial point here about this being a potential shootout back and forth, would be which one can protect their quarterback. Cleveland has become a pretty good pass rush team. Certainly getting to the quarterback more than they have in the past. Right now they rank in the middle of the NFL with 14 sacks, actually towards the top third with 14 quarterback sacks. But the problem is they don't protect their quarterback. Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor sacked a combined 21 times so far this season. It's San Diego. I know they missed Joey Bosa, but I do believe they could put some pressure on Mayfield here. Mayfield's a great escape guy, so it sort of negates 100% of what San Diego can bring. To me, that's where the game begins and ends, with pass pressure. Which team can protect the quarterback best? I was initially surprised that this game moved total-wise from 46 down to 44.5. It's since been on the comeback, Drew. I see 45.5s out there, and some 46s have been reinstated right where the opener began this whole process. So I think I would have to look toward over in that game. I think both of these secondaries are vulnerable, and once again, you have to like both of these quarterbacks and their ability to move their teams through the air.
Robbie, next game up, this one in South Florida, Chicago Bears traveling to play the Miami Dolphins. Looks like the market has taken an opinion here, bought this one up from Chicago -2. Over the key number, now we're seeing 3.5s across the board. The Bears laying on the road here, 41.5 the total. What's the market seeing here on the Bears, and do you agree with it?
Well, it's got to be the defensive improvement of the Chicago Bears. There's no doubt about it, Drew, right? I mean, we hear Khalil Mack's name every single week. What he has done single-handedly to improve the play around him on the defensive side has been amazing. The Bears right now, if you just take a look at their last 3 games, Seattle puts up 17 against them, Arizona 14, Tampa Bay 10. Miami, certainly a better offensive team than Arizona, but they're not a better offensive team than Tampa Bay, so they're somewhere in the middle. I think things have caught up to the Miami Dolphins. It's kind of a gimmicky offense, right? I mean, Adam Gase has his playbook full, but he's got a lot of small receivers, the reverses, the quick slants, the offense totally predicated on speed, and I just don't know that flies against this Chicago defense. And Ryan Tannehill is not unique in the fact that when pressured, he can make mistakes. Maybe he's more mistake prone under pressure than others, but still no quarterback likes pressure. He's going to see a ton of it here from the Chicago Bears. Now, what Miami, to me, in my estimation, is going to have to do in return is get after Mitch Trubisky. The problem for the Miami Dolphins in this game, Drew, would, in my estimation, be the Chicago rushing attack. Chicago's far more balanced offensively than the Dolphins are. To me, the Dolphins are lopsided. They have to throw the football to be good. They're not going to run the ball against the Chicago Bears, who only allow 64 yards a game. So I'm in full agreement with what bettors saw in that opening number of -2. Now 3.5, like you say, to push through the 3 and add the hook to it is quite a bit. And I will tell you how much, if you're just a person who shops value and has numbers, I'll tell you that power ratings only made the Bears a 0.5 point favorite here. And those power ratings are what keep bettors and handicappers grounded before their eyes run away with their thoughts and, run away with their wallets to the window. The Bears are probably padded by 3 points here, more than what they should be, but they are off a bye week, rested. I described a lot of reasons fundamentally why you would like the Bears. So we'll see how this one goes. Miami's in I don't want to say a desperate situation, but they're off back-to-back losses, and back at home, they really need to put up a good performance. So I think you'll get fight out of the Dolphins, but I can't disagree with the line move here.
Robbie, next game up, we got 257, 258, Carolina at Washington. Looks like the Panthers were laying 1. Now it's either Pick'em or Washington laying 1 at home. 44.5 the total, Robbie.
Really surprised, Drew. I would say I'm more surprised at this than any other line move so far this week for a couple of reasons. Carolina gets Greg Olsen, Cam Newton's favorite target, back at tight end this week. And next to Luke Kuechly, their second most valuable defensive player, one of the top 3, Thomas Davis, returns off of a 4-game suspension. You've got 2 really key players for the Panthers back in uniform this week. And it looks like Kawan Short has practiced this week, their top defensive tackle. A lot of good additions to the Carolina roster this week. Now, situationally, we can make a little bit of case for the Washington Redskins. Obviously, they come off of what was a dreadful Monday night performance on Drew Brees night. Washington was never in that game from the opening kickoff, so you would expect in the NFL this happens a lot. Come home, bounce back. You're never as bad as you look. You're never as good as you look. That type of situational angle would apply here to the Washington Redskins, and you could say, how lucky was Carolina? 63-yard field goal, game's final play to beat the New York Giants. And if you want to add to that, you just take a look at that pass defense of the Carolina Panthers, which was shredded by Eli Manning last Sunday. Then we turn around and watch Eli Manning and the Giants offense against the Philadelphia Eagles last night and return to the obvious conclusion that offense isn't very good. And they shredded Carolina's secondary, and Carolina's secondary has been really beat up all season long, over 280 yards per game allowed. So Alex Smith and that passing game should have room to throw the football. I would say this: the return of Thomas Davis helps that pass defense overall. I think the installation of recently acquired Eric Reed last week didn't have a great game, but Eric Reed is a Pro Bowl type safety, and as he gets more accustomed to the Carolina playbook, I think that secondary tightens up with Short at defensive tackle. The pressure becomes more. Like I say, I was really surprised that Carolina was faded so heavily so far this week. I think I might get on that side because Cam Newton with Greg Olsen back, the defense with Davis back, to me justifies a play on Carolina here. I just don't know that Washington is maybe as good as they started the season. We'll see if they can do this whole thing through the air on Alex Smith's arm. It wouldn't be a surprise, but I'd be willing to play the other side.
Robbie, next game up, we got Indy at the New York Jets. Looks like the Jets laying 2, 1.5. Another line that from the opener moved through a key number of 3. They were laying 3.5 at the open. Now I'm seeing 1.5 at most shops. 45.5 the total. How would you look to bet the Colts and Jets here, Robbie?
Well, my initial reaction Sunday night when I first saw openers was I would like the Colts with 3.5. Now, like you say, the difference between taking 3.5 and 1.5 is huge in NFL. So I back off of that. Not even somewhat, more than somewhat here at this point. But I do think that Indianapolis probably matches up pretty well here. The quarterback play, if you rate these two teams as even, and if you go down the line statistically, they really do come out pretty close to even. The quarterback play, as much as people want to rave about Sam Darnold, I don't think it's close here. Andrew Luck has been phenomenal throwing the football, and he's been forced to throw the football, right? He had to throw it 59 times against the Patriots last Thursday night. Remember, the Colts have 10 days to prepare for this game, but he threw for 355 against the Patriots last Thursday night, and the week prior, he got involved in a shootout with the Houston Texans where he had to throw 62 times, threw for 437 yards. Andrew Luck against Sam Darnold, to me, especially when I saw the 3.5 to start the week, was where this game began and ended, and I would be on the Indianapolis side plus points. They've been especially good, and this was not the case under the Chuck Pagano regime. But they've been especially good at pressuring the quarterback. They rank number 3, believe it or not, Drew, in the NFL in sacks, quarterback sacks. They've put the opposing quarterback on the ground 17 times. Darnold has mobility, but the Colts have found a way to pressure the quarterback. The Jets have too, and their numbers are pretty good as well. I think they've sacked the quarterback 14 times. But again, would you rather have Andrew Luck under pressure or Sam Darnold under pressure? Give me Andrew Luck. I think the defenses in this case are equal. Neither team the Jets do have a edge rushing the football, but I think that the Indianapolis run defense will be able to slow them down somewhat here. I think a couple of big runs last week against the Denver Broncos kind of skewed the rushing statistics for the Jets. I don't know if they can break those here. I can make a lot of reasons, a pretty good case for the Indianapolis Colts here, but the number, and that's what we deal with here, is numbers and value. I just don't know that it holds anywhere near what it held at the opener. And at this point in time, if you like Indianapolis, you might just be better served playing money line and getting a little extra cash for a straight-up victory.
And guys, remember the podcast special here? We got Veno 49, which is half off his 7-day all-access package, and that's VENO 49 at checkout. We got 261, 262, Robbie. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. AFC North battle here, 51.5 the total, with Cincinnati laying 1.5 at home.
Yeah, this you have to. I don't know if you have to get beyond. Well, you do have to get beyond one important factor here if you want to play the Bengals, and that factor would be that this is pretty much a must game for the Pittsburgh Steelers in regards to the fact that it's a divisional contest. And the Steelers are already 0-1-1 in their first 2 division games. And if we stretch them out a little bit further, Drew, they're 0-3 in AFC play, which doesn't bode well at the end of the year when, typically you see a bunch of teams tied at 9-7 or 8-8, fighting for a last wild card spot, 10-6. Pittsburgh really can't afford another AFC loss to fall to 0-4. They can't afford another divisional loss to fall to 0-2-1, especially since that would mean a Cincinnati win, which would make the Bengals 2-0 inside the AFC North and 4-0 inside the conference. So if you want to bet the Bengals, you have to get beyond the fact that Pittsburgh is going to give as good an effort as they could give. You would expect them to give as big of an effort as they can give here to stay in the divisional and conference race. All that being said, fundamentally, I think you could make the case for Cincinnati here. At Pittsburgh's defense, let's not go too crazy over what they did against the Atlanta Falcons last week. They used a 28-7 second half against a depleted defense to break open a 13-10 game. Once Atlanta fell behind, there was really no hope, and it snowballed, and Pittsburgh gets what looks like a very impressive, and you see a lot of writers this week and a lot of media saying that Pittsburgh's defense made big strides last week. I'm not so sure that that's the case, especially against the offense that they're going to face here. For Cincinnati, last week you're down 17-0 to the Miami Dolphins, and they use an incredible, for anybody who watched that game, an incredible 27-3 second half run to blow past the Dolphins and cover the spread late. I mean, it looked for all intent and purposes like that game was going to end 2017 since he gets another late touchdown, win and cover. They've been really good on the offensive side of the football, and Pittsburgh's been really poor defensively. Cincinnati has not been any great shakes on the defensive side themselves, and neither team seems to be able to play a lick of pass defense. But I think fundamentally still, all things considered, offense, defense, special teams, Cincinnati's the better team. I won't play the game because I do think that Pittsburgh, in this situation, I just find it time and time again in the NFL, this is when teams come through. So perhaps Pittsburgh will be a play of many. It won't be a play of mine, nor will Cincinnati.
All right, Robbie, that was the last game for us. Anything else you want to throw out in conclusion before we shut this down?
Nah, just what we normally say, Drew. Good luck to all the listeners. Have a good weekend. Hopefully the advice we give here on the podcast, and if you're picking up our selections from Sportsmemo, hopefully everything we do for you helps you profit even more and build the bankroll.
Absolutely, Robbie. Well, best of luck to you this weekend. Check out Rob Veno's services on sportsmemo.com. And remember, 7-day all access with Robbie V can be half off, normally $99, now just $49 with Veno 49 at checkout. We will be right back with Andrew McGinnis to finish off the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast.